I had the idea for Dragonfly when I was a full-time teacher at Orleans Park School in Twickenham in London. I'd been on the end of various training days in my career at that point, and I sat through a particularly inept one led by a chief inspector who proceeded to talk to us all day using a PowerPoint. And it was in preparation of an inspection, and then at some point, bullet point 74 said, and of course during the inspection make your lessons interesting. Being the person I am, I then sort of put my hand up, pray tell how do that. And he said, oh, I'm sure you know how to make it interesting. And at that point, the whole sort of staff room burst like laughing, and I just had the seed of an idea, e.g. I'm going to try and provide those practical answers to the questions that teachers wanted. And at that point, INSET seemed to be nothing but a theory or just someone's opinion, really. I'd also been interested in, right from the start. I'd done my PGC at Cambridge, and I'd always found the legendary Dr. Martin Booth, sadly dead now, but I always thought, oh, I'd really, really like that job. I was just always interested in the art of teaching. And I suppose lastly, the success that my department had with exam results and option uptake. I think one of the reasons that did get me into it finally, or pushed me into it, was that I was seconded off to help other history departments in the Richmond Borough, and then the Historical Association wrote to me how I'd managed to get more people opt-in for history in my school than any other state school in England and Wales at the time. I'm sure it's been superseded. And our exam results were always the highest within the school. And we had one girl who got the highest mark with the London Exam Board, and that included many of the top independent schools at that time. So clearly doing something right. And so I'd been seconded off to help other history departments. And I thought, well, they all seem to like what I'm doing. Why don't I run courses in this? And then on a whim, I suppose like a lot of teachers in London, it was, I've been lucky enough to buy. I mean, a situation that goodness knows no teacher could afford to live in buy a first house in zone 6 now. Myself and my wife, we basically were able to afford to buy in zone 2 and then move out to Kingston, I think it was zone 5. And I had a house, but if Mary was pregnant, she was teaching at Kingston FE College at the time. And if we had a kid, we simply couldn't afford that house. So we sort of sold up, used our equity, and moved back to Cardiff, where I'm from, and set up Dragonfly with a sole mission statement, and it's remained the same, that we wanted to make courses literally 100% practical, instead of 99% theory and a little bit of practical at the end, which is what I was used to up until that point. The name behind Dragonfly is one that I've been asked a lot over the years, and very sadly, the truth is nowhere near as interesting as all the alternatives that have been presented to me. It was asked recently that the amount of work we do in Southeast Asia, especially China, whether the dragon part of Dragonfly was something to be carefully chosen and strategically chosen in order to reflect future markets. No. It was chosen because a friend of mine, I was completely stuck with what to call the company. I'd just been a teacher, I had no idea about naming the company. And someone said, well, why don't you look up in the yellow pages, something you won't find anymore. Why don't you look up in yellow pages the ideas of advertising companies, and somebody will give you an idea tell you what you want, and they'll give you 20 ideas if you pay them enough money. And so one I looked up was called Dragonfly Advertising. A couple of hours later, I was going to do the job and think, well, which advertising company am I going to contact? And the one I could remember from the other pages was called Dragonfly Advertising. And I thought, why did I remember that? So I looked at it, and there was a lot of companies at the time, I think with Key Stage, Keynote, and all sorts of educational terms. And I just thought, let's just be a bit different. I'm sure teachers have had enough of hearing another educational word, so Dragonfly Training it was. I wish there was more to it than that, but that is the truth. The impact of COVID-19, like a lot of businesses, huge. Quite simply. I was asked the other day by a friend what was the impact on it, and I think I said something around £750,000 loss of turnover. That was his. I was also asked by a friend what was it, and it was the loss of some very dearly loved staff who've been with us for years. Another person asked me what was the impact of complete change in what we've been doing, and it was profound. Like a lot of companies, it's profound. So when it first happened, it was 6 weeks of hell, just cancelling everything, doing a lot of work that didn't pay a single penny, but schools cancelling, which they had to do, delegates cancelling, which they had to do, reimbursing invoices, doing the right thing by the customer, but all of which was not being paid. And whilst the staff had been placed on furlough, myself and my wife, the director, and my fellow director Nadeek, we got nothing. So it was a very, very difficult time. The next thing was to switch online. We made one of the best decisions that we ever made, which was not to rush. So I basically got together with some of my senior trainers, sat down and watched almost every online training delivery you could watch, you name it, from car mechanics through to filmmaking, through to assembly line work, you name it. If there was an online training course, we sort of watched it. And what we then did was put together training courses, our training courses, which were based on what we felt the good practice for that online. Our work had established over the 20 years preceding that, an incredible reputation, and we didn't want to lose that. We knew that we couldn't have the total hands-on that almost all Dragonfly courses have, but we still could make it practical. And as a result, we basically just worked out how to ask the right questions and put forward the right questions and scenarios to make sure that the training, which we was on Zoom, it could have been Teams, but it was Zoom, was the highest quality possible. We had to look at the timings, we had to look at the contents, how long anyone talked, how long to put into breakout rooms, all of which we then, after we worked out what we thought we were going to do, we actually must have had more trial runs. So all my trainers were running courses for only 3 or 4 people, or my friends or my children, and then we just worked hard to get it right. And thankfully, the feedback that we've had clearly indicated that was time well worth spending. I myself went back to teaching a lot in COVID. I had obviously carried on teaching my entire time as director of Dragonfly. It was a simple thing. If I wasn't very good in a class, I had no right to stand in front of others as well. So I changed from being a secondary teacher of history to a primary teacher of literacy, extended writing, creative writing. And for what it's worth, Estin had given me the highest accolade of teacher, sector lead in practice 4 years ago. And from there, I had also a lot of parents were suddenly phoning me up saying, you taught my son or daughter a few years ago, could you teach their brother or sister? And suddenly I was back to virtually full-time teaching, which was just the way it had to go. I had to suddenly basically adapt to that. So COVID and teaching, it's been incredibly difficult. Teachers have faced just incredible difficulties, hardships in the classroom to make sure that they are, it's still delivering their lessons. Teachers in classrooms, we try at Dragonfly to provide as many practical solutions as possible. We've run obviously a myriad of courses helping teachers with online teaching, blended learning, and getting back to the classroom. A good colleague of mine at school says, "No, I'm almost nervous. I've got to go back in the classroom with the kids." Having just got used to one system, she was back and getting used to another. So we continue to offer our practical strategies that try and ensure whatever medium you're using, it's the most effective delivery way possible. But the bottom line is good teaching remains good teaching, trying to get the kids on task as soon as possible, trying to get them on task, doing something so you can feed back on it as soon as possible, make it clear modelling. In fact, I think my modelling sometimes is better on Zoom than it was in Classroom. And, quick response to pupils' needs. The thing that I find hard about teaching a group on Zoom is that intuitive reading of the classroom thermometer. We've got smaller groups on Zoom, I can actually read that very well, but large groups on Zoom, I do find that a challenge. And you just have to pace the lesson completely differently and structure that lesson completely differently. When moving into breakout rooms, very specific tasks. I can't say I've absolutely mastered it myself, but I've got a lot better at it, there's no doubt about it. But the only thing I would say, good times are, if not good times, better times are around the corner. I think we will get to the stage when we're back in school. I think we will be able to utilise blended learning, the good parts of it. And while if the future is completely Zoom or Teams, then I'm not sure that's great. I prefer that human interaction with people in a room. But I do think that it has speeded up the process of it having a contribution to schools, and there's no doubt about it that it has. Some of the memorable things that have happened in Dragonfly over the years, where to begin? Certainly, there's a couple of the trainers, there's some of the stories we've had. I myself had someone who left the course after 45 minutes that I was running in Manchester, and I said, oh my God, I've never had this before. How can I have offended you after 45 minutes? He said, no. He said, I've absolutely loved every second of it. The only problem is I'm in complete the wrong course. I should be in the course on double glazing next door. He said, that's just so much more interesting than what I'm going to do. He said, I thought I'd stay. We've had someone turn up asking when death was going to be involved, and we said there wasn't. And he said, but I'm on a bereavement counselling course. It had taken him 35 minutes of sat in an A-level chemistry course before he came out with this. We had someone who fell in a canal at break time, having been told expressly not to go to the canal because it was quite misty. They went out there, fell in a canal, and had to spend the rest of the course in robes provided by the hotel. I certainly, whether it's affection or a slight, well, I don't know whether the other one, let's keep it as affection. I did a job for the Ministry of Education in Dubai, and they said that I was going to have 30 people on the course. I ended up with 300 people in an aircraft hangar. I don't think I've made as good a job of anything as I did in that 1.5 hours doing classroom management to 300 people in an aircraft hangar. I did pull out the stops there. I've been very proud of the way that we've matured from being a company that works largely with the state sector schools to a company that works now as well with independent schools and now international schools, international work accounting for about 40% of what we do. And I'm very proud of that. We've not only just read all the excellent feedback, but from where I came into seeing courses run by Dragonfly all over the world, literally all over the world, gives me a real sense of that, something I started has grown to be something that's incredibly interesting. And I've learned an awful lot on my travels around the country, seen all sorts of different schools, and very much I've enjoyed the travel myself. I started teaching in Kenya, and that's where I met my wife and fellow director Mary. And my love of travel has been coupled with my love of education and teaching. And been, able to merge the two has been one of the aspects of my life in the last 20 years, along with my children, that I have enjoyed the most.